I'm going to read tonight is from the memoir, and I looked for, the memoir is very much grounded in the body as it is, but I wanted to choose a selection that's um, especially of the body, and also that could stand alone a little bit. So really all you need to know about this particular piece is it comes from the title chapter, The Part That Burns. And the narrator is 9 months pregnant with her second child. She's just had an argument with her mother during which they speak openly for the first time about the sexual abuse that the narrator suffered in early childhood by her stepfather named Mafia. The mother reveals that she knew about the abuse at the time and gets overwhelmed with emotion that spills out as anger. She storms out of the house. And meanwhile, the narrator has been obsessing about this garden that she planted at the beginning in the spring. She planted it from seed, but has no gardening skills, so it's all out of control. She doesn't know how to tend to it, didn't really know how to tell what was a seedling flower and what was a weed. So now it's a great big mess. And we pick up the story just as the narrator's mother is storming out the door, and the narrator is looking on with her 2-year-old daughter, Sophie, on her hip. I have a sea of rage in me, also a baby. I can reconcile neither. My mother is an old 44, dried up and sexless, a crone like in the fairy tales I read to Sophie. Who believes anymore that a crone can be a fairy in disguise? I'd like to see this magic. A crone is just a crone, and I don't ever want to be one. But I'm afraid that in some fundamental way, I already am and always will be. Here's what Mom says about her own mother, Grandma Krause. She expected my mother to be a boy with how low she was carrying. Any lower, I'd be dragging this child on the sidewalk, Grandma Krause liked to say in her last agonizing weeks of pregnancy. When, instead of a boy, my mother squawked into the world, Grandma Krause was disappointed. To console herself, she named my mother Georgianne and called her George, the same name she'd planned for the son who didn't come. George, the name of my mother's father and grandfather. My mother's Smithville home was a squat, clapboard farmhouse in the field on the edges of Duluth. I never asked if the chickens that lived upstairs in winter had dominion over the whole second floor or just one room. Mom only talked about the squawking and the shit. Details make the legend, and legend forms its own truth. Another legend, though this could be wrong too, is how once during an overnight bender, Mom's uncles burned down the outhouse. So when she trudged across the sopping grass the next morning, all Mom found to piss in was a hole in the ground and a pile of ash. What I know for sure, though, is that Grandpa and Grandma Krause were both dead by the time Mom turned 17 when she got pregnant and married my father. Then, the party on Park Point. Here's how I imagine that thick summer night. Mom was 18 and smoking True Blues, teased hair sprayed stiff, coral candy lipstick to match her dress. My father, a young James Dean, tight Levi's and leather jacket, hair slicked back with Brill cream. I was up the hill in the West End at Aunt Flossie's. Mom had roped her younger sister into babysitting. Maybe I was asleep, maybe crying, maybe gazing at Flossie with my watery newborn eyes, wise and floating. I was still easy then. Park Point is a narrow 7-mile sand spit across the metal lift bridge from Duluth's working harbor. Stretching south from the port of Duluth, the point divides the mean waters of Lake Superior from Superior Bay and the Duluth Harbor Basin. Later, my mother would tell me how the beach shack shook that night as bodies packed in by the dozen, everyone smoking and drinking and shouting over each other and over the songs that poured from the record player, Hey Jude and Mrs. Robinson and Sunshine of Your Love. Fumes from the hardboard processing plant across the bay filled the air. Above the lake, a flat disk of moon hung like a nickel, slicing open the black water with a sharp tunnel of light. In the house, faces shone and t-shirts clung damp across chests and underarms. Mom sat on the green brocade couch in the postage stamp living room, her long legs crossed at the knee, the last of her cigarette in one hand, a warm beer in the other. Her two best friends on either side of her also smoking and drinking. Mom's cheeks, round and high, glowed with alcohol in summer, glowed with sex. But her lazy eye went loose. The patch she'd worn as a child for her amblyopia had never corrected the problem entirely. As she watched her young husband holding court in the Harvest Gold kitchen, he was telling his best story Mom could see, the one about the motorcycle accident on Skyline Parkway. It was obvious in the way he waved his arms and hands, indicating the road ahead, indicating the rain, the oncoming car. It was also evident in how the women's lips parted, how their eyes softened with want. Mom clenched her jaw, but wait, he had married her, hadn't he? She sucked in her stomach, still fleshy from me, and yanked at her thick bra straps to hoist up her breasts, hard as rocks and hot with milk. Christ, though, she wanted more. The friend on Mom's right leaned in, pointed toward my father, whispered something pungent with beer and tobacco. Mom threw her head back and laughed, tapped her cigarette, and watched the long, soft snake of ash fall to the floor. Then, enormous hollow boom and blinding light. Bodies and furniture rose weightlessly above the ball of fire as windows blew out and the walls collapsed in 4 directions, falling out like playing cards. The pitched roof billowed up 50 feet closer to the moon before crashing to the ground. A gas line had busted under the floorboards. Mom's 2 best friends died instantly, while Mom was thrown a dozen feet from the house before landing like a cloth doll on the dirt, shoulder ripped from socket, ear dangling from scalp. We thought she had died, Aunt Flossie always said. Too many people jumping up and down is how Mom always told it. She flicked a cigarette, my dad continued to say, so many years later. It seemed cruel, really, to blame Mom still. Several people were killed in that explosion. As the house burned, flashing lights flooded the sandbar in red and blue. Sirens howled across the water as squads and fire trucks and ambulances rushed to find the house already reduced to blackened sticks. My father, unhurt, watched it smolder. The brain is an extremely fragile organ made up of delicate, soft tissue that floats inside the skull. The severity and permanence of injury to the brain depend on the degree or extent of damage. Specific scale scores should be used to measure damage in order to determine the right treatment, and treatment should begin as soon as possible and continue as long as necessary. Should is a slippery word. My mother's ear was sewn back on, her shoulder pinned together. That is all we know. I march out the porch door to my side garden, Sophie beside me, her blanket in one hand and my ratty childhood doll Burnett in the other. I named Burnett when I was 4, after my favorite TV star, Carol Burnett. I first called the doll Carol, but my cousin said that was boring. Now Sophie mothers Burnett with a ferocious brand of love, as if seeking to reform a recalcitrant prisoner. It's comical, really, the strictness of Sophie's doll discipline, when I myself struggle with setting any limits at all. No, 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 Sophie yells, do not touch. While Sophie instructs Burnett, I bend over as best I can to claw, pull, yank, and tear at whatever seems ugly in the ground. It's demanding work, and at some point, I begin to groan. Sophie stops mid-tirade. Mama owie, she says, her face clouding with worry. No, honey, I say, Mama's just weeding. Sophie resumes her scolding of Burnett. No biting, she says. Then, in a conspiratorial whisper, I bite Mama. When Sophie eventually fusses, I ferry her back inside for bath and jammies and toothbrushing. I tell another story of the Isthmus people, this time a good witch in a house tucked so neatly behind another we have never noticed it. That house is frozen, I say, tucking Sophie's ringlets behind her ear. tracing the soft hollow of her temple. It's covered in icicles always, even in summer. And because of the way the ice sparkles, and because the house is so close to the water, it looks like a diamond floating away on the waves. Blessedly, Sophie falls asleep before I do, no biting at all, and I head straight back to my garden. The sky's not dark yet, but the moon dangles high above the lake, a small bright thing, barely half of itself. It's either, what is that called, waxing or waning? I have no idea. This garden, too, is half of what it was before I began weeding, yet also somehow more, I think, as my pile of ripped up quackgrass and dandelions grows satisfyingly large. Apparently, some weeds are obvious, even to me. Mom was orphaned at 17. Chickens lived in her house. Mafia beat her in front of me. These are facts, but I don't know what they mean to me or to my cells. Cognition refers to thinking, but thought takes many forms. Before I dropped out of college, I took 2 years of Latin. In that language, cognoscere means not only to know, but to learn, inquire, experience. I tear harder at the overgrowth, wrenching at whatever I find, ropey stems and prickly leaves. I attack until my palms blister, my back and hips ache, my knees carve divots into the ground. This work is addictive, a trance of never-ending elimination. Demolition is like that. It sucks you in. It swallows. By the time I rise to assess the emptiness I've carved, I recognize the fire between my hips and ribs as more than gardening. This baby is on the way. Guess what, sweetie? You're almost there. This is what the nurse says when she examines me. Her hands are warm and gentle. Just a skip and a jump, hun. She pats my shoulder and grins. Maybe I'm not a very good feminist for liking how she calls me sweetie and hun, but I do like it very much. Hit the buzzer when things pick up, the nurse says as she leaves. John feeds me ice chips as I ride cascading waves of pain. This homey country birthing room is a far cry from the high-tech city hospital where Sophie was born, where I was hooked up to a monitor and Pitocin, where a male doctor I'd never met sliced me open wide to make pushing go faster. I'm happy here in this sleepy, low-lit place, laboring in my own way with raspberry leaf tea and some black cohosh to speed things along. Before dawn, my water breaks with a gush. I vomit. Atta girl, John says happily. He remembers this turning point from Sophie's birth. He laughs his real laugh. We whisper together between contractions until it comes the fiercest wave yet. Here's the nurse again, now the doctor. My body seizes and rolls through the shocks that follow, and I stare into the void behind my closed eyes, entranced by the giant weeds coming up through the darkness, one after the next, rhythmic and ghostly, white roots intact, wet dirt clinging to fine-haired tendrils. Visualize your cervix opening, the baby moving through you, the nurse says. I try to think of Jackson Street, those roses opening petal by petal, but I see only weeds pulled up by the root, one after the other, until something else finally pulses its way through the darkness too, something fiery that slides back into myself. This is my body, filling my body. Into this vision, weeds drawn from fertile soil over and over again, weeds and the rich, heady smell of dirt, weeds and the awkward act of pulling life from life, life into life, one thing to die and another to live. My son is born. This boy is neither flower nor weed. He doesn't come from the earth. He comes from me. The part that burns is the part that glows. My body is bigger than my body. My body is a nebula, hydrogen and helium, dust and plasma. Bodies are made of cells, and cells are made of atoms, and atoms are billions of years old. My son is slick against my naked chest. His skin is the exact same temperature as mine. His tiny bones are soft and alive. His mouth is a mouth searching for home, and home is the stellar nursery of my skin, my breath, my milk. Hello, baby, I say. His gray eyes float through light years to fix on mine. This, I realize, is a covenant. Waning moon, John says, pointing out the hospital window. Now I know, but it doesn't matter because soon enough the moon will wax again. Not everything that leaves comes back, though. I don't know what will become of my mother, or the woman who moans, or me, or John, or Mafia, or any of us. I think of the yard squirrels Sophie has named Carl and Sugar, their blurry, anonymous squirrel bodies always running. I still don't know what it means, but here's what I do know. I am a moon, and Sophie fits into my hollows, no matter the shape I take, and so too will my son. Look at you, I whisper. His name will be Maxwell for deep water. You need to push, hun, the nurse says. The placenta is still inside me, this temporary organ formed from the same bundle of cells that also became this tiny creature in my arms, now studying my face like a familiar constellation. In some cultures, the placenta is called the twin. In this rural hospital, it's just a placenta. Still, I'll be allowed to take it home where I'll bury it in my garden to decompose into simple matter and begin again. Scientists say our cells hold everything forever, but cells are constantly dying and regenerating. Sometimes cellular regeneration hurts, but not always. The body replaces itself with an almost entirely new set of cells every 7 to 10 years. Some important parts are renewed even faster. Other important parts are never renewed. All these facts are true. Push, the nurse says again, you have to push. She presses hard on my stomach with one hand, a graphic kind of pain, and strokes my forehead with the other, which makes me cry. You can do this, she says, just push. So I do. I push.
That was incredible. So after that, I'm sure you all want to buy Jeannine's book. I'm going to just hold up a copy. It's the part that burns. If you buy it, she even sends you a beautiful little book plate that's signed, which you can stick anywhere you want if you don't even want to stick it in the book. You can use it as a bumper sticker if you want. Anything. That was incredible. That was just, talk about a range of, if we're talking body tonight, just what a range of experience you just took us through. That was just gorgeous.
Thanks.
So now we're going to open it up to conversation with Jen Pastelof. And I'm going to read Jen's bio real quick. There it is. Sorry, I just lost it. Jen Pastelof is a life coach, and she also has a podcast called What Are You Bringing? Which is a killer name for a podcast, and just a great thing to say anyway. She also, well, before pandemic, she was traveling the world with her unique workshop on being human, a hybrid of yoga-related movement, writing, sharing aloud, and the occasional dance party. She is a frequent contributor to Shape magazine, including Shape Escape at Miraval Resort and the Women Run the World initiative, and has been featured on Good Morning America, New York Magazine, Health Magazine, and other media outlets for her unique style of teaching, which she has taught to thousands of women in sold-out workshops all over the world. Jen is also the guest speaker at Canyon Ranch, and she leads the writing and the body workshops with author Lydia Yuknovich, as well as retreats with Emily Rapp Black, founder of the online magazine The Manifestation. Jen is based in Los Angeles with her husband and son and a cup of coffee.
It's so awkward. Why is it so awkward?
I don't know.
Just hearing someone read your bio as you sit there smiling.
It's always awful.
It's just the worst. I don't know.
Sorry.
But thank you. Thank you. You did a great job at it.
Jen, at one of my events a couple weeks ago, I had that reaction. It was almost like I got hives or something while the person was reading my bio. I got like so anxious and nervous that the red just crept slowly up until, my favorite. Yeah.
I don't know, but I wanted to say something though to Jeannine when you were saying your friends were like, "Oh, you're doing an event with Jen Pastelof. How did that happen?" Because you asked.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Because you asked.
Yeah. That's what I said.
Um, Now, to be clear though, that doesn't mean that we get everything we asked for. I get a shit ton of no's, but like you asked. I was like, "Oh yeah, that would be amazing." We have so many synchronicities, but you asked, and I think about how many opportunities are missed because people just don't ask.
Yeah. That's super cool. I love that you said that, because I have, that is exactly what I told my friend. And everyone actually that I've asked through this book launch has said yes, except for one writer who's also in the middle of her own book launch and just, couldn't do it, but she wrote a blurb, so it's just, yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. And then there's this other little tidbit I would add to it, because I was thinking about that before this too, which is the whole kind of like say yes until you have to say no. Because I see that in your work as well, this sort of like expansive openness to say, well, I'm not always sure what's coming at me, but I'm going to say yes until I have to say no, out of like curiosity, because I don't know where it's going to lead, and it could be really amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, and really learning how to listen to your body intelligence. So like what a no feels like, and what a yes feels like. And I'm really good at that. I'm not a genius at it yet, but I'm really good at that. So this was an easy no. I mean, yes. This was oh Lordy. I did today I wrote a post on Instagram. I said, "I am not scared," and I forgot the not. So it said, "I am scared."
Well, I mean, well, I always say I'm scared a lot of the time, but I do it anyway,
Oh, absolutely. But the point of the post was like, I am not scared to mess up my feed, to share other people, to promote, I'm not scared that there isn't enough. And so absolutely, but I am not scared of that. And so I was like, oh my God, I was voice texting and I guess I just forgot. Anyway, this was a full body yes. So
yeah.
So I'm going to jump in here. One of the things we wanted to talk about was embodied writing. Both of you do a lot of writing about the body. And I'm wondering, is there a line between embodied writing and writing about the body? And if there is, between the two of you, can you tell us more about what that means?
Mm-hmm. I really want to hear what Jen has to say about this. So I'm just going to say something brief and then listen to what she has to say. And then I'm sure I'll have something to add. But I think Jen already started pushing us in that direction when she talked about, the answer in your body, like you feel it in your body. And to me, that quality that she's talking about, that's really required for embodied writing. And that is different than writing about the body, and they can go together. Like they definitely can be overlap there, but that sense of like being in the body, like actually being in the body and being aware of the sensations of the body and bringing that onto the page, I think, I think that puts us in the direction of embodied writing. I would love to hear Jen talk about that.
I mean, it's really the same thing. A few weeks ago, I was doing a photo shoot for a friend of mine, and all she had was a crop top. And I was like, yeah, girl, no, that I don't know. That's all she had. And I wore it, and my belly was kind of hanging out. And my body looks good right now, but I always had a little belly, okay? A little belly. And I said, don't you dare airbrush them, which felt good, by the way. And she looked at me and she said, you're so embodied. And I was like, well, that's just about the best compliment I've heard in a really long time. And she was like, and then someone else said it to me yesterday, and I've been thinking about what does that mean? And it does. For so long, I was not in my body, and this may sound a bit woo, but essentially just really disconnected from what was going on in my body, and I'm not these days. And so for me, embodied writing is being in your body, and what that means is, with my coaching clients, I ask everyone, to place their hands on, and I got this from Lydia Yuknovich originally, but like place their hands on a part of their body where they feel they're the most in or disconnected from or connected to, it doesn't matter. And they write from that place using their imagination. Because so often, and we just see what comes up, so often, at least for me, is the disconnect is so great, it's hard to tell the truth on the page. It's hard to fully be vulnerable or whatever you're trying to do because it's all coming from up here because you're not in your body, right? And yeah, writing about the body, like Jeannine said, it can overlap, but it doesn't, like what you're writing can be nothing. It can be about a meal. I mean, whatever, but it's being in your body, which is why both Jeannine and I think do this work that involve the body and the creativity to unleash and unearth and unlock and to get in it.
Yeah.
So
that's
what I have to say on that matter.
I couldn't agree with all of that more. And also just this super interesting, I want to say something about, I do have more to say about this, but speaking of the belly, my daughter and I are on a thing like just sort of intentionality and actually giving our bodies love and praise and, and anyway, whatever, it can be cheesy, but we don't care. And so I texted my daughter today and said, oh, I think you're going to be happy to know that I just walked by myself in a mirror and I said, oh, you little sweet little belly, like looking at there, I was wearing yoga pants. But anyway, so, and I mean, it was genuine, it was like a little loving little feeling.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say about embodied writing that the reason that I chose that selection is that, so my book, I didn't live in my body, like at all. Like I was tethered by a very thin string to the body, which is a very common, effect or, impact of childhood sexual abuse. Like you leave your body and then you're gone. And so like everything, from here up and nothing from there down. And that's a really great self-protection, while it's protective, but eventually, like every other defense mechanism, it can become also harmful. So that particular passage, when the narrator is pregnant with that, second baby, when all that stuff is starting to come up, she's coming back into her body and it's really, really painful. It's really excruciating. And she can't turn it off. And that birth scene, and this is real, this is how it really happened, but it really was like that. It was like the weeds and the vision and the tunnel and the reintegration of body, and mind and spirit, like all sort of just happened. And like nothing in life is linear. So then of course it took, lots more back and forth, but to live in the body is such a privilege. It's, especially if you've ever been locked out of your body, you're aware of that, but to live in the body is such a privilege. And so to write through the body, to have embodied writing, and I agree with you, Jen, it doesn't have to have anything to do with the body. But when that writing is coming from a place of being in the body, it's alive on the page in a way that's different. You can feel it. You can feel it when you're reading writing like that. You can feel it when you're listening to it. You can feel it when you're producing it. So like one of the things I do, is similar and different, is that I have people ground themselves in the body and just become really aware in a heightened way of their sensory experience in that moment, in that physical place where they are in their body, and and just record those things, just to come all the way in to the skin, and the bones and the feeling of the temperature of the air and the smells and the physical objects. And it's startling what can happen on the page just from that little tiny exercise.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Both of you practice. I'm going to kind of combine these two. I have two questions here I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to kind of combine these into one because they really coincide with each other. But you both practice yoga. And before the pandemic started, you both led in-person retreats that combined yoga and writing and breath work and writing I just said writing twice, sorry.
Mhm.
So I want to talk about what the benefits of that approach are, and if you feel like it affects the quality of the writing. And you've both written, Jen, I've read, actually Jeannine passed it on to me this afternoon, but you have this beautiful paragraph about falling in love with your students, and just sort of this deep universal affection and
Fall unlovable, I
really
call
just
it.
falling in love with these people that you work with, and the bond that creates when you are in this project together. And Jeannine, I think you've said the same thing when you and I talked in our interview, of the experience of when you are in that kind of intense workshop, the kind of bonds that are created, that as well as, no, you know what, never mind, I'm gonna leave that as a separate question. Just go with that. I'll go to the other question next.
Yoga?
Yeah, yoga, and then how that, and combined with the writing, and how that affects your emotional response to the people that you work with, and what else that does to the end product and yourself. Go ahead.
To be clear, the work I do, it's never about, there's loads of writers that come to my stuff, but it's never about the craft of writing per se. Whereas like when I do my workshops with Lydia, and we work so well together, but hers is more about that. Mine, really, I use the writing as a way to unearth or excavate or free ourselves. So again, like maybe Jeannine would be in my workshop and she would write the most poetic, beautiful thing, but it's not about that. So when you asked, I think you said something like, does it affect the quality of the writing? I'd say yes, because it allows people, things come up, and 9 times out of 10 in my rooms, people are so surprised. Where did that come from?
Yes.
But it's not about, if this makes sense, it's not about the craft of writing. It's not about like whether you're a good writer or you know how to do yoga or any of that shit. It's just, you just come. And I use those different vehicles as a way in to, explore what it means to be human. And so it's not like, a writing workshop. That's why it's funny where I always say it's not really a writing workshop. It's not really a yoga workshop. And I love that because it doesn't fit in a box, but some really gorgeous things get born out of it in terms of people who are writers. And it just allows people to be less in their brain. I mean, the brain's obviously beautifully important, but most of us need to be more connected to the body and the heart.
And just as it's just Jen flashed her book in there, I just want to remind everybody watching that her book is On Being Human, and it can be purchased through literary books. Just like Jeannine's book, The Part That Burns, can be purchased through literary books through pandemic if people have the resources. It's been hard on everybody, but indie booksellers and artists of all stripes have been really, really taking the hit. And if people have the resources, books make such good gifts. If people have, there are so many birthdays coming up in springtime. Have you noticed? It's just amazing. And it's always good to have an on-hand surprise present if you need one.
If you can always
throw that out there,
get
just
it from a bookstore.
Yeah, and we all want to support our indie bookstores. That's for sure. Because boy, we don't want to lose those, because then we're stuck with who. So the name that will not be spoken.
Thank you.
Anyway, go back to your yoga question, but I just wanted to jump in there when I saw her pick up the book. I just wanted to remind people.
We love you. We appreciate that. I'm sure Literati does too. Oh my gosh, we would be just lost without our bookstores. Bookstores. So the passage that I chose to read tonight, the thing is that all of our stories are held in our bodies. They live in our bodies. So all of our memories, everything that we've ever experienced lives on literally in every cell of our body, which is so extraordinary. And so when you bring the body into the conversation, And it's interesting what Jen was distinguishing, and I think it's really important between the craft of writing and like just getting at the material, whether you want to use that for writing or not. So
Exactly.
I teach really craft-based classes, but on retreat, that's never what it is. It's about getting at, I call it, everybody has their different, catchphrases, but I call it your fierce original voice. And it's the idea of this, this inner place, but that our busy big brains are always overriding. And it doesn't, you might think, oh, I'm talking about censorship, but it's not even, doesn't have to be that. It's just like we're very attached to the stories we think we know, and and that's as deep as we can get, and that's brain science. And anyone who's super interested in this, there's fascinating books you can read about it. One of my favorites is called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and he breaks down system 1 and 2 of the brain and why it is that we have such a hard time thinking a new thought.
John, I want to order it from you. Can you put that book in the chat?
Oh my God, Jen, if you haven't read it, it's
haven't.
It's so accessible. He's a great writer. It's science, like it's like, airtight science, but he just breaks it down, and it will help you understand how Trump got elected.
Yeah.
Like it spells it out, like why people cannot see past what they think they know. Okay, I'll give a quick example. You guys want to play a little game with me? How many animals did Moses bring on the ark with him?
Wait, did what?
How many animals did Moses bring on the ark with him?
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay, what do you think, Amy? How many animals?
I'm gonna say 100.
Okay, well, most people would say 2 of each kind, but the fact is Moses didn't bring any animals on the ark. Noah did. And
That's what I thought. That's why I was like, but I felt too stupid to say.
No, it's okay. I saw you hesitating. I said, I think Jen's going to get me on this one. But the thing is, because system 1 of our brain, the answer before we even really hear the question, that's how system 1 works. So in order to get into system 2, which is where new things come from, you need to quiet that system 1 down. You need to get it out of the way. And so there's, like Jen was saying, well, you need a way in, you need different vehicles, you need ways to get to that material. And yeah, and so body-based things are one way. I use very constrained writing exercises because they occupy system 2 of the brain. They keep it, it's like a puzzle, and while you're puzzling it out. And I loved what you said, Jen, about like people look up and they're like, this is what typically will happen is they'll go to read what they wrote. And it's beautiful, but that's not what it's about. And they'll just be like, and then like halfway through it, they're crying and saying, what the hell just happened? Where did this come from? Like, I've never written about this before. I didn't decide to write about this. Like like they didn't even know that that's the thing they were going to write about until they like looked at it when they're all done, which sounds like kind of like, I don't know, like, oh, woo-woo, like hypnosis or something. And it's not at all. It's like just being able to get out of your own way.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound woo. But I was like, what was I about to say? I call it the stories, I call them your bullshit stories, and I'm a coach to quiet your inner asshole, right? Because it's those are the inner asshole is the one that censors us and tells us, all the things we think we know. And my favorite quote, I say it all the time. I heard Wayne Dyer say it. I think it's Mark Twain, but it's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you think you know for sure that just ain't so.
Oh
Nothing has changed my life more than that quote.
Yes. The stories that Stephen Gould says, the stories we need to examine most closely are the ones we think we know the best.
Yeah.
And I tell people, I go a step further to say, and which story do you think you know the best? Your own story. That's the one we think we know for sure. And it's the one that is the least stable, and actually also the one that does us the most damage when we're too fixed in it, because we're not human beings, we're human beings. It's a verb, it's active. Like we aren't, and so like we can't be so fixed in those stories because it's so limiting. Yeah. But it is vulnerable. I will say that when you enter into that work of actually being willing to surprise yourself and discover something that you didn't know about your own story, or a different perspective on it, or angle on it, or detail, you are opening yourself up to you having to like get to know yourself, and you might, you have to be open to discovering, oh, maybe I was the asshole in that situation, maybe I wasn't who I thought I was entirely. And I think it does require that vulnerability. Someone once asked me on a panel about memoir writing, like, are you afraid of what you'll find out about like the people in your life? And I was like, well, actually, I'm most, afraid may not be the right word, but of what I'll find out about myself. Like,
absolutely. I mean, if this year has done anything, it's that. It's like, wow.
All right.
Your writing is
I want to ask.
poetic, by the way.
I have a question in the chat. There's a question in the chat that somebody wants answered, and I have one more question I want to get to before we have to wrap up. So I'm gonna.
I think I just started to allude to that. I was when you were reading, I was like, you're such a poet, and that's what the question. Well, the person said there's a luminous quality to your prose. Can you speak to how it comes to be? How much revision play is in the process?
What a beautiful thing to say. I don't think I see that, but yeah, that's just really sweet to hear. That's lovely. And I like working with images. I think that just as we're saying that the truth lives in the body, I think the truth also lives in the physical world. And so another way to get out of my head is to put my attention to the exterior world and really force myself to look at it carefully and try to put that into words and let that do the work of the, instead of intellectualizing or emotionalizing the experience. Just you had a really cool thing in your the opening of your book, Jen, where you talk about taking your heart out and putting it on the shelf. And I love that without any apology or just making this very literal, I don't even know how to describe that device, but clearly you didn't literally, but you just very matter-of-factly talk about that.
I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it and own it. I'm a poet and I haven't written in a while, but that's my first love. And that's why I'm really drawn to your writing. I was like, oh, she's a poet. But that, and Lydia Yuknovich has given me so much permission reading her and seeing what she does in her writing, and like you going, I can do whatever I want. So I infuse my poetic voice or that kind of stuff in it. So thank you.
Yeah, I loved it. So and it reminded me of something, that I would do. And then, that feeling you have where you're full of admiration and then a little envy, like, that's cool. Like, I could have done that. And I think poetry, I think language really matters. And so I think language carries the story, like, it's not just the what, it's the how. And the language can hold so much of that power and do so much of that work. Yeah. So to me, that's the fun of it. Like, that's where it feels really alive. And also for me, that's where I change. So if I can craft my story, the whole point is that it might change me to do that. And it's through that wrestling with the words and images. That's where I change, not just like telling you, oh, I had an abusive stepfather and, here's what happened. It's through this other alchemical process of the language.
We've got time for one, maybe two questions, but you both of you coach individually and you coach in groups. You teach in group settings. You don't coach in group settings, but you coach individuals and you teach in group settings. Can you talk about what can happen in a group setting that's not possible with an individual, and vice versa? What can happen with a one-on-one session that's not possible in a group setting? Who wants to go first?
Do you want to, oh yeah.
While we're paused, I'm going to just throw out there, Jeannine, my husband is downstairs laughing his head off because he's been bugging me to read Thinking Fast and Slow, and I've refused. And now that you've said it, I've got to read it, and he's won.
I have the link pulled up. I'm going to order it from Literati. I mean, look, I'll start with this one because, you know, pre-pandemic, I traveled around the world. I did all these workshops all over, and the magic for me was in the community. And I was very clear. I just like, oh, I love groups. I love groups because they're, you know, I have one tattoo and it says I got you, but like you in the group, especially what I'm able to cultivate, because this is something I say a lot, is that I'm terrible at almost everything in life, but what I'm good at, I'm really good at. I'm really good at helping people feel safe. So in the groups I cultivate, you could see this, I got you. That's what it is. This experience of being gotten, the physicalization of that. And you could see people who, you know, all I think people really want is to be seen and heard, and people have this experience for many of them in a way they never have, you know? So the group energy really lends itself to that because it becomes a living, breathing thing. And, you know, I don't know how I feel about God, but I'll say for me, it feels like God is in community. And so the private one-on-one is so different. I didn't know how much I would fall in love with it until COVID because I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And um the only difference really is the way that the person gets the full attention of me for a longer time. But the way, at least for me, the way I pay attention, it's the same no matter if we're in a group. It's just a matter of time. So they're just getting me one-on-one and they're not getting that collective feeling. But yeah, groups are my jam.
Well, I love all of that, and it's so weird, Jen, because that is like that's my superpower is like safe spaces, and I just know I can own that. I know it's true. I've heard it millions of times, but I also just I mean, it's not surprising considering my background. It's just incredibly important to me.
How have we not been best friends? I don't
I don't
understand.
know.
Like,
Like,
it's
are you
really
my
weird. I'm
sister?
like,
You
how?
know, what's your mom's name?
Thank you for, I know, are we, Barbara? Thank you for asking me to do this, by the way, because I'm
Yeah.
like, you're just incredible. And I mean, your energy, your writing. My friend texted me, I love her. And now she's in the chat saying, I love you. Will you be my best friend? My friend Laura.
That's your friend. Okay, well, we can all be best friends. But yeah, it's true. And I think that when you said something about God too, I'm like, because I don't, you know, like spiritually, I'm sort of like a equal opportunity, you know, but
Yeah.
but something happens when you put people in a circle and their guard comes down, and we see it happen on the
Yep.
first night of retreat. I always have a yoga teacher with me and a coordinator, and then we debrief after that first circle. And anyone who comes on retreat with me, you know, it's okay. We say nice things about you, but we're looking in that circle, and anyone who seems, you know, like they need our extra love and attention, and we just make, you know, we kind of talk through how it all went. And sometimes my coordinator, like, or if I have a new yoga teacher that hasn't been on retreat before, they might be really worried, you know, and I'll say, don't worry, by tomorrow morning, you know, you watch,
Yeah.
people are going to file back into this circle, and everybody's shoulders are going to be down, you know, and their faces are going to be softer, and their voices are going to sound a little different. And it never fails. And it's always like that. And this beautiful, beautiful thing happens. And everyone always says, how did you get the right people to come? And I said, it's, you know, like, it's not curated. Like, the people come who need to come. They read the description and it speaks to them, and they come.
Self-selective.
Yeah. And then this thing happens, and I think it's a communion is how I think of it. You used the word God. Like, there's something that happens that's larger than the group itself, and you can feel it literally charging the space. Like, it's a really beautiful thing. And yeah, you can't do that one-on-one, but what you can have one-on-one, yeah, is that deep quality of attention, and you can get down into the nitty-gritty of what one person is working on, you know, and you can push that thing forward in a much more direct way, because that's what one-on-one is for. So, you know, it's a really powerful to work one-on-one, but it's different.
And I'll say, you know, the thing with the group, the magic happens, but it starts with you. It starts with me. It's not because of me, but it's being able to create that container. So when you have a leader, a facilitator, whatever you want to call it, who, I don't, you know, I'm guessing you're this way too. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I am congruent. You know, there's all these ways that I show up that are in alignment with what we're doing, right? So if you have someone who's facilitating something, who's, you know, not kind, or all these other things, that's going to manifest in the group.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that, you know, I taught elementary and middle school for 10 years, and I really think that comes into play because I just recognize that people come to the island. My summer retreat before COVID, it was always on this little island, and they get off that boat, and you know they're terrified, and I know that, and so I, you know, it's like we are all still children. We're all who we've always been at every stage of life, and if you can like make this, so like I meet everyone at the dock, and we have, you know, flowers, and like, you know, spirit lives in detail. So like if everything feels really safe, like, oh, look at all of these attention to detail. But I think also it's like that feeling inside of yourself, that I would not allow an unsafe situation to unfold. Like I am 100% clear, and I know what's safe and what's not. And I just think that that sort of like, because I'm so clear on that inside of myself, it's evident, it just radiates, like everybody can feel that. And therefore it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to go into like their own interior unsafe spaces, the places that feel unsafe, because that external space is completely safe.
That's fantastic.
I'm gonna come.
We're probably going to end up doing one together, I think.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
I'm going to start stretching now to get ready.
You don't have to be stretchy. Yeah, everybody thinks you don't have to be stretchy. I think like I've had people who can't get down on the floor. You know,
Oh, me too.
We put a chair in the yoga room. Like, you know, it's not about it's not fitness yoga. It's about, yeah, it's about, like Jen was saying, it's being in your body, you know, and just, but yeah.
When I first started teaching yoga, obviously I was much more of a yoga teacher. And in the beginning, everyone who came to my stuff was from like my yoga classes and lots of yoga people. And nowadays, like let's say I'm leading a retreat in Italy, which I am actually in the fall, God willing, Italy and France. Maybe 2 people at the whole retreat are like have a yoga practice. And I remember, I think it was 2016, I was in Italy, and this woman turns to me at the end. She goes, "How does a 74-year-old grandma who hates yoga end up at a yoga retreat?"
That's nice.
And I mean, I don't call it a yoga retreat anymore, but yeah, it's really not about that at all. It's really just like, yeah, being in your body and becoming more embodied.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then through that, potentially getting a little closer to the story that you didn't already think you knew. You know,
Yes,
that's
yes,
right? And it lives in the
yes,
body. So
yes.
All right. Well, I think we got to wrap it up. That was wonderful. Again, if the links are in the chat, if you want to pick up either Thinking Fast and Slow, or Jen Pastelof's book on being human, or Jeannine Ouellette's book, The Part That Burns, which we are here to celebrate the launch of.
Yes, Mazel Tov.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All wonderful books, and help support Literati. And
thank you, all of you, for joining us, and hope we can have you in the store for your new books when conditions allow. But we hope you continue to stay safe and be well until then. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for joining as well. And of course, you're watching on YouTube. There's links to purchase books in the description below. And we hope to see you at that next event. So take care, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen, Amy, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really
so
cool.
great. Thank you.
I hope we get
Kyle.
to meet in real life.
Oh, we will.
Great night.
Awesome. Okay, good.
We
I'm glad
will.
to hear it.
No doubt. I got my first vaccine.
I'm all
It's
done.
happening. Good
Yeah.
for you.
I'm
I'm
still
jealous.
waiting. Illinois is slow, man.
Coming soon, Amy.
I know. I mean, everything. I think I'm just so confused between Chicago and Illinois. In Illinois, I'm eligible. In Chicago, they're like, not yet. My kid just got his. My 22-year-old just got his first one today, though. But that's because of the zip
Good.
code he's in. So that's something.
Well,
One of us got one.
you have a real cute couch, Amy.
Thank you.
You do. You do have a cute couch. So
Real
stay
cute.
safe.
So I stay
Oh,
here on the couch a lot. But.
Yeah.
Good. Well, at least it's cute. Cute pink couch.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. I'm gonna go
Thanks,
get
all.
that
It was
book
great to
now.
meet you.
Night.
Have a great night, all.
And Jeannine, now I got to read that book. My husband texted me in the middle of the day. He goes, "How you like me now?"
Good night,
How
guys.
do you like me
Bye.
now?
Yeah.